The world is full of scary places that you definitely never want to go to, like isolated islands inhabited by dangerous people and places with extreme environments. So, in today's video, we're going to take a look at 15 of the most terrifying places in the world.
Imagine standing at the edge of a bottomless well where 8 people have vanished forever. Or walking through a forest where even the strongest minds report hearing desperate whispers. What about exploring a tunnel lined with 6 million human skeletons? These aren't horror movie sets. They're real places that exist right now. Places where history, tragedy, and sometimes the unexplainable have created something truly terrifying. Today we're diving into the 15 most haunting locations on Earth, places so disturbing that even seasoned explorers think twice before visiting. Stay with me until the end, because number 1 might just be in your own backyard. Hanging Coffins of Sagada. High in the mountains of Luzon Island, the Igorot people have practiced one of the world's most visually disturbing burial methods for over 2,000 years. Rather than burying their dead, they suspend coffins from cliff faces, sometimes hundreds of feet above the ground. The ritual begins before death. Elders carve their own coffins from hollowed logs, often much smaller than Western caskets, requiring the deceased to be placed in a fetal position. After death, the body is smoked to preserve it, then carried to the cliffs in a procession. The higher the coffin is placed, the greater honor for the deceased, as they are believed to be closer to ancestral spirits. What makes these sites particularly eerie is their current state. Centuries of weathering have damaged many coffins, leaving them broken open with skeletal remains visible or partially fallen out. Some cliffs display generations of coffins in various states of decay, creating a timeline of deterioration. Most unsettling are the hanging bodies, where instead of coffins, ancestors were once tied directly to the cliff face, their mummified remains still visible in a few locations. Despite their disturbing appearance, the sites remain sacred to locals who believe disturbing the coffins brings misfortune. Several tourists who removed souvenirs reportedly mailed them back after experiencing persistent nightmares. Sedlec Ossuary, Czech Republic. Beneath the Cemetery Church of All Saints in the Czech Republic lies a chamber that transforms death into macabre art. The Sedlec Ossuary contains the remains of between 40,000 and 70,000 people, arranged into elaborate decorations by a 19th century woodcarver named František Rint. Unlike Portugal's Chapel of Bones, which simply lines walls with remains, Sedlec displays an unsettling creativity. Rint created a massive chandelier containing at least one of every bone in the human body. Garlands of skulls hang from the ceiling. 4 enormous bell-shaped constructions occupy the corners. The centerpiece is the Schwarzenberg coat of arms, recreated entirely from human bones, including a raven pecking at the eye socket of a Turkish soldier. What makes this site particularly disturbing is learning how it came to exist. In 1278, an abbot scattered soil from Golgotha, where Christ was crucified, over the cemetery, making it one of Europe's most desirable burial sites. When plague and war filled it beyond capacity, older remains were exhumed to make room. These bones were originally stacked by a half-blind monk before Rent transformed them into his bizarre masterpiece, even signing his name on the wall in, yes, human bones. The Noria Cemetery. Nestled in the abandoned mining town of La Noria in Chile's Atacama Desert sits a cemetery where the dead refuse to rest. Unlike the stacked graves in Guatemala's La Verbena Cemetery, La Noria's horror comes from what happens after dark. Local residents report seeing the deceased rise from their graves at nightfall and wander through the abandoned streets. What makes this site particularly disturbing is the state of the cemetery itself. Harsh desert conditions have unearthed many of the bodies, leaving mummified remains and skeletal parts exposed above ground. Coffins lie shattered and open, their occupants seemingly escaped. Clothing and bones scatter the pathways between graves. Photographers who've visited report feeling watched, with equipment mysteriously malfunctioning. One documented case involved a tourist who took a small rock as a souvenir, only to experience such intense nightmares and misfortune that they mailed it back to the desert with an apology note. La Noria remains largely unvisited, except by the most daring, or perhaps foolish, dark tourists. Island of the Dolls, Mexico. Just south of Mexico City, hidden among the canals of Xochimilco, floats a small island that hosts what might be the world's most disturbing collection. Thousands of dolls, many missing limbs, some decapitated, all weathered by the elements, hang from trees and buildings across Isla de las Muñecas. The island's disturbing transformation began in the 1950s when its caretaker, Don Julian Santana Barrera, discovered the body of a young girl who had drowned in the canal, along with her doll. Believing her spirit remained, he hung the doll from a tree as a sign of respect. Soon after, he claimed to hear whispers, footsteps, and anguished wails in the darkness. For the next 50 years, Julian collected discarded dolls from trash heaps and canals, hanging them throughout the island as offerings to appease the girl's spirit. The dolls gradually deteriorated, their plastic faces bleaching in the sun, eyes clouding, limbs rotting away, creating nightmarish visages that seemed to watch visitors from every direction. The island became even more chilling after 2001, when Julian was found drowned in the same spot where he claimed to have found the girl. Visitors today report dolls turning their heads, opening their eyes, or whispering among themselves. Local boat operators refuse to approach the island after dark. West, Heilstatten Hospital, Germany. Deep in the forest outside Berlin stands a massive, abandoned tuberculosis sanatorium with a particularly dark history. The sprawling 60-building complex of Bielitz Heilstatten began as a place of healing but transformed through German history into something far more sinister. During World War I, a young corporal named Adolf Hitler recovered from a leg wound here in the very rooms that would later house Nazi experiments. After World War II, the Soviet military took control, using it as a forbidden military hospital where countless Cold War-era patients disappeared under mysterious circumstances. What makes Bielitz Heilstatten particularly unsettling is how nature has reclaimed it. Trees grow through operating theaters. Vines twist around psychiatric restraints. Patient records still litter floors, complete with disturbing photographs and diagnoses. Rusted surgical equipment remains positioned as if awaiting the next procedure. The hospital gained modern notoriety in the 1990s when Russian serial killer Wolfgang Schmidt, known as the Beast of Bielitz, used the abandoned pavilions to hide the bodies of his victims. Urban explorers report hearing screams from the tuberculosis wards, seeing shadows move through the children's pavilion, and encountering unexplainable cold spots in the psychiatric wing where restraints sometimes rattle without wind or explanation. Chapel of Bones, Portugal. In the small Portuguese city of Évora stands a monument to mortality that challenges even the most strong-stomached visitors. The Capela dos Ósseos, Chapel of Bones, takes the concept of memento mori to disturbing extremes. Rather than simply displaying a few skulls as warnings about death's inevitability, 16th-century Franciscan monks covered every surface with human remains. The bones of approximately 5,000 monks were exhumed from overflowing cemeteries and meticulously arranged to form the chapel's walls and ceiling. Entire columns are constructed from femurs and tibias. Skulls stare down from arches and cornices, some with teeth still intact. Even the cement binding these macabre building blocks contains crushed bone and powdered skull. Above the entrance, a chilling message greets visitors: "Nos osos que aquí estamos, pelos vosos esperamos, we bones that are here, for yours we wait." Particularly unsettling is the display of two desiccated corpses, one an adult, one a child, hanging by chains from the wall. Unlike other ossuaries that aim for artistic arrangement, the Chapel of Bones feels intentionally unsettling, designed specifically to confront visitors with the inevitable corruption of their own bodies. Jacob's Well, Texas. From above, Jacob's Well in Texas looks deceptively peaceful. A circular spring about 12 feet wide, crystal clear and inviting on hot summer days. But this natural swimming hole hides a deadly secret beneath its surface. The seemingly innocent spring is actually the opening to an underwater cave system that plunges down 120 feet, equivalent to an 11-story building submerged in darkness. What makes Jacob's Well truly terrifying isn't just its depth, but what happens when you venture too deep. The cave system contains a network of narrow tunnels, one so tight divers must remove their oxygen tanks to pass through. Beyond this point lies what locals call the Chamber of Death, where powerful underwater currents can trap even experienced divers. 8 people have lost their lives exploring these depths, their bodies sometimes taking days to recover. Despite warning signs and its deadly reputation, the well continues to beckon thrill seekers. The most chilling aspect? Some say the well has a strange allure, an almost hypnotic pull that draws swimmers deeper than they intended to go. Hoia Bacău Forest, Romania. Deep in the heart of Transylvania, a region already associated with darkness, lies the Hoia Bacău Forest, perhaps the world's most haunted woodland. Locals have avoided this place for centuries, crossing themselves when even speaking its name. What sets this forest apart isn't just its twisted, contorted trees that bend in physically impossible directions, but the consistent experiences reported by those brave enough to enter. Electronic devices malfunction. Batteries drain instantly. Visitors report intense feelings of being watched, sudden anxiety attacks, and physical symptoms including rashes, nausea, and unexplained burns. Countless photographs capture strange orbs, faces among the trees, and misty apparitions. At the forest's center lies a perfectly circular clearing where nothing has grown for centuries, despite numerous scientific attempts to plant vegetation there. In the 1960s, biologist Alexandru Sift photographed disc-shaped objects hovering above this clearing, bringing international attention to the site. Many who've spent the night describe hearing female laughter, names being called in the darkness, and seeing lights moving between the trees. Perhaps most disturbing are the stories of those who entered the forest and lost hours of time, emerging with no memory of where they'd been. Aokigahara Forest, Japan. At the base of Mount Fuji lies a sea of trees so dense that wind barely penetrates its canopy, and GPS signals fail beneath its branches. Aokigahara Forest's natural beauty conceals its grim reputation as one of the world's most popular suicide destinations, second only to San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. What makes Aokigahara particularly disturbing is its silence. The dense volcanic soil absorbs sound, creating an unnatural quiet that hikers describe as suffocating. The forest floor is littered with personal belongings, photos, letters, and abandoned campsites from those who entered with no intention of returning. Japanese folklore intensifies the forest's macabre atmosphere. For centuries, it was believed to be home to yurei, ghosts of those abandoned during times of famine. Rangers who patrol the forest looking for bodies report experiencing unexplainable phenomena, compasses spinning wildly, feelings of being followed, and voices calling from empty sections of woodland. Perhaps most disturbing are the colorful plastic ribbons sometimes seen trailing through the trees, not left by hikers marking trails, but by those who feared losing their nerve, ensuring they couldn't find their way back out. Despite government efforts to prevent its dark reputation from spreading, Aokigahara continues to draw both the suicidal and the morbidly curious. Pripyat, Ukraine. There's something profoundly unsettling about places abandoned mid-life, and no ghost town captures this better than Pripyat, Ukraine. Once home to nearly 50,000 people, this Soviet city became uninhabitable in a single day, April 26, 1986. When the nearby Chernobyl nuclear reactor melted down, releasing 400 times more radiation than the Hiroshima bomb. The city's residents were given just hours to evacuate, told to pack for only 3 days. They never returned. Today, Pripyat stands as a radioactive time capsule. Textbooks remain open on school desks. Hospital beds still contain personal belongings. The amusement park, set to open just days after the disaster, stands rusting. Its Ferris wheel an iconic symbol of nuclear devastation. Nature has begun reclaiming the city, with trees growing through buildings and wildlife returning to streets where radiation levels have fallen. What makes Pripyat particularly chilling isn't just its status as a nuclear disaster zone, but how it represents the fragility of human civilization, how quickly our achievements can be rendered uninhabitable. Some areas remain so contaminated they won't be safe for human habitation for another 20,000 years. The door to hell, Turkmenistan. In the middle of Turkmenistan's Karakum Desert burns a fire that has not stopped for over 50 years. The Darvaza gas crater, known locally as the Door to Hell, is a 230-foot-wide crater continuously ablaze with natural gas that creates an apocalyptic landscape visible for miles. Unlike other locations on this list, the Door to Hell is entirely human-made. In 1971, Soviet engineers drilling for oil accidentally collapsed the ground beneath their rig, opening a massive hole that began leaking methane. Fearing environmental catastrophe, scientists decided to ignite the gas, expecting it to burn out in a few weeks. 5 decades later, the inferno continues unabated. What makes this site particularly unsettling is the experience of approaching it. The ground around the crater is unstable, with smaller sinkholes opening without warning. The heat becomes unbearable within 100 feet. At night, thousands of spiders and insects, drawn to the light, can be seen throwing themselves into the flames. Local nomadic tribes believe the crater is a portal to a dimension of suffering. They report hearing screams emanating from its depths on particularly still nights. Scientists who have studied the crater have discovered extremophile bacteria living in its superheated environment, organisms that shouldn't exist according to conventional biology, raising disturbing questions about what else might thrive in such impossible conditions. Manchac Swamp, Louisiana. Just outside New Orleans stretches a waterway so haunted that locals call it the Ghost Swamp. Manchac Swamp's twisted cypress trees draped with Spanish moss create a natural maze where travelers routinely become disoriented and lost. But it's not just the landscape that disturbs visitors, it's what allegedly dwells within it. The swamp gained its sinister reputation in the early 1900s when Julie White, a practicing voodoo priestess, reportedly cursed the 3 communities surrounding the wetlands, declaring, "One day I'm going to die and I'm going to take all of you with me." In 1915, the same day she was buried, a Category 4 hurricane obliterated all 3 towns, killing hundreds whose bodies were swept into the swamp. Night tours through Manchac report frequent encounters with bizarre phenomena, lights moving against the current, the sounds of phantom riverboats, and most famously, the Rougarou, a Cajun werewolf-like creature said to hunt among the trees. Fishermen avoid certain channels where equipment inexplicably fails, and GPS systems show impossible readings. Perhaps most disturbing are the accounts of calls from the water, voices that sound like lost children or distressed women, that seem to move around boats, luring the sympathetic toward the deeper, unmapped sections of swamp where entire vessels have disappeared without trace. Paglolia, Plague Island, Italy. Just a short boat ride from the beautiful canals of Venice lies an island so terrifying that local fishermen refuse to cast nets near its shores for fear of catching human remains. Poveglia Island served as a quarantine station during the Black Death, where the infected were sent to die. Later, it housed a mental asylum where a doctor reportedly performed cruel experiments on patients before throwing himself from the bell tower after claiming spirits drove him mad. Records suggest over 160,000 plague victims were burned or buried on the tiny 17-acre island, creating soil that is estimated to be 50% human ash. Modern visitors report immediate feelings of dread upon landing, with some experiencing physical symptoms like nausea and skin burns. Electronic equipment frequently malfunctions, and psychics refuse to set foot there, calling it the doorway to hell. Archaeological expeditions have uncovered mass graves containing layers of bodies, and construction workers regularly discover human remains when digging. The island's buildings, particularly the former asylum and plague hospital, remain largely intact, with patient restraints still attached to walls and operating tables rusting in abandoned surgical theaters. The Italian government has sealed Poveglia to the public, though determined dark tourists occasionally find illicit ways to visit. Overtun Bridge, Scotland. The Overtun Bridge in Scotland presents one of the most baffling mysteries in the world. Built in 1895 near Dumbarton, this ornate Victorian structure spans a 50-foot ravine. Innocent enough until you learn what happens there. Since the 1950s, over 600 dogs have inexplicably jumped to their deaths from the same exact spot on the bridge. What's particularly disturbing is the pattern. The dogs are almost always long-nosed breeds who suddenly become agitated, run to the same low wall, and leap over, often on clear, sunny days. Some survivors have immediately tried to jump again. Animal behaviorists remain stumped, while locals whisper darker theories. Some believe there's a thin place here, a Celtic concept where the barrier between worlds grows weak. Others point to the bridge's tragic human history, including a man who threw his infant son off the bridge in 1994, claiming the child was the Antichrist. Scientists suggest strong mink scent from below may overwhelm canine senses. But this doesn't explain why the phenomenon occurs in just one spot. The mystery has earned the bridge its chilling nickname, the Dog Suicide Bridge. Of Paris, France. Beneath the romantic streets of Paris lies the largest necropolis in the world, a 200-mile labyrinth of tunnels lined with the carefully arranged remains of 6 million people. The Paris catacombs began as limestone quarries that were later converted to ossuaries when the city's cemeteries became dangerously overcrowded in the 18th century. What makes the catacombs particularly terrifying isn't just the sheer volume of human remains, but how they're displayed. Skulls and femurs are arranged in elaborate patterns. Hearts, crosses, and spirals. Entire walls consist of stacked bones, creating corridors where visitors walk between solid barriers of human remains. Plaques with philosophical reflections on mortality punctuate the displays. Only a small section is open to the public. The remaining vast network is illegal to enter, patrolled by specialized police called cataflics. This hasn't stopped cataphiles, urban explorers, who access the forbidden zones through secret entrances, sometimes spending days in the underground maze. Several have disappeared forever after becoming disoriented in the unmarked tunnels. The most disturbing aspect may be what happens when you venture deep enough into unauthorized areas. Evidence of modern rituals, occult symbols drawn in unexplainable substances, and the remnants of gatherings in chambers that shouldn't exist, according to official maps. In these deepest sections, visitors report hearing whispers and footsteps from tunnels that records show were sealed centuries ago. There they are, 15 places where reality seems just a little bit thinner, where history, tragedy, and sometimes the unexplainable have created something truly haunting. Would you be brave enough to visit any of these locations? Or perhaps you know of somewhere even more terrifying? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey through the world's darkest destinations, help this channel grow by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you never miss our next expedition into the unknown. This is Alex Mercer from Rapid Rank, reminding you that sometimes the most fascinating places are the ones we're warned to avoid. Until next time, stay curious, but stay safe.